Hey everyone, tonight, we descend. We're going beyond the polished pages of history textbooks, past the kings, the battles, the dates you memorized for exams, and into the shadows where the real stories live. Stories of monks brewing beer like liquid salvation, of lovers whispering curses into clay dolls, begging demons for desire, of athletes wrestling in sacred groves or bleeding in Roman sand, and of a city, beautiful, glittering Paris, built quite literally on bones. This is history, unvarnished, raw, sometimes ridiculous, often terrifying, always human. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Music swells slightly, then dips to a subtle, suspenseful hum. Visuals transition to a montage teasing the 4 sections, a frothy tankard, a glowing love potion, an Olympic discus throw, a skull-lined catacomb wall. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Let's ease into tonight's journey, together. The brutal reality of the Crusades. 1. The spark. A pope's desperate plea turns holy war. It began not with swords, but with words. In the year 1095, Pope Urban II stood before a sea of nobles and peasants in the French town of Clermont. His voice rang out, painting a picture of a holy land defiled, of Christian pilgrims slaughtered, of the sacred city of Jerusalem weeping under infidel rule. He didn't just ask for a help, he promised salvation. "Take up the cross," he thundered, "and your sins shall be forgiven." It was a divine marketing campaign. For the pious, it was redemption. For the restless, it was adventure. For the desperate, it was escape. The first crusade was born, not from strategy, but from a potent cocktail of faith, fear, and opportunity. 2. The People's Crusade. When zeal outran sense before the knights even saddled their horses, the madness began. Led by a fiery monk named Peter the Hermit, tens of thousands of peasants, women, and children, the People's Crusade, surged eastward. They had no armor, no training, no plan, fueled by apocalyptic fervor. They saw enemies everywhere. Jewish communities in the Rhineland became their first victims, massacred in the name of a religion that preached love. When they finally reached Anatolia, the Seljuk Turks, professional soldiers, cut them down like wheat. Their bones littered the road to a Jerusalem they would never see. The first lesson of the Crusades: holy passion is no match for cold steel. 3. The march of the mighty, nobles, knights, a naked ambition. Then came the real army. Dukes, counts, and kings, men like Godfrey of Bouillon, Bohemond of Taranto, and Raymond of Toulouse, led tens of thousands of armored knights and foot soldiers. This was no pilgrimage. It was a military expedition draped in sacred cloth. They marched for God, yes, but also for land, for glory, for titles their crowded European homelands could never provide. The journey was a nightmare: scorching deserts, treacherous mountains, starvation, and disease. Men drank from puddles, ate their own horses, and buried comrades by the roadside. The path to heaven, it turned out, was paved with suffering and dysentery. 4. The siege of Antioch, starvation, betrayal, and a miraculous lance. After months of grueling travel, they reached Antioch, a mighty city guarding the path to Jerusalem. The siege lasted 8 brutal months. Inside the city, defenders were well provisioned. Outside, the crusaders starved. Horses vanished, boots were boiled for soup. Then, betrayal. A disgruntled guard opened a gate. The crusaders flooded in, only to be immediately besieged themselves by a massive Turkish relief army. Trapped, starving, and on the brink of annihilation, a priest claimed to have found the Holy Lance, the spear that pierced Christ's side. Whether miracle or madness, it ignited a final, desperate charge. Against all odds, they broke the Turkish lines. Antioch fell, the cost, half their number. The lesson: In the Crusades, faith could move mountains, or at least, inspire men to die on them. 5. The bloody gates of Jerusalem, when piety met slaughter in July 1099. After a 5-week siege, the Crusaders breached the walls of Jerusalem. What followed wasn't liberation, it was apocalypse. For 2 days, they rampaged through the city. Muslims, Jews, even Eastern Christians, anyone who wasn't theirs, were put to the sword. Men, women, children. The chronicler Fulcher of Chartres wrote, chillingly, that in the Temple of Solomon, they waded in blood up to their ankles, the streets ran red. The air reeked of iron and death. This was the liberation of the holy city, a baptism not in water, but in blood. The Crusaders wept with joy at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, their hands still sticky with gore. The sacred and the savage had become one. 6. The kingdoms of sand, building castles on a graveyard against all odds, they stayed. They carved out 4 fragile Crusader states, the county of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, the county of Tripoli, and the kingdom of Jerusalem. They built magnificent castles like crack-day chevaliers, towering symbols of their power. But they were aliens in a foreign land. They spoke French and Italian, not Arabic. They distrusted the local Christians. They were perpetually outnumbered, surrounded by hostile powers. Their kingdoms were less divine realms and more armed camps, built on the bones of the conquered, forever teetering on the edge of collapse. 7. The rise of the military orders, warrior monks and holy bankers to defend their precarious holdings. New institutions were born, the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller. These were monks who fought, warrior ascetics sworn to poverty, chastity, and obedience, and to killing the enemies of Christ. The Templars became legendary, fearless in battle, disciplined, and, thanks to donations from across Europe, unimaginably wealthy. They invented early banking, allowing pilgrims to deposit money in Paris and withdraw it in Jerusalem. They were holy warriors and holy accountants, a bizarre, powerful fusion of the spiritual and the material that would eventually lead to their spectacular, brutal downfall. 8. The Second Crusade. Hubris meets humiliation. The fall of Edessa in 1144 triggered the Second Crusade, preached by the charismatic Bernard of Clairvaux. Kings Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany answered the call. It was a disaster, poor planning, Byzantine treachery real or imagined, and fierce Turkish resistance shattered their armies. They failed to recapture Edessa and barely made it to Jerusalem, their one achievement. A humiliating, failed siege of Damascus, a city that had been their ally. The aura of divine invincibility was shattered. The Muslims, watching, learned the Franks could be beaten. 9. The Lionheart and the Leper King. Clash of Titans. The stage was set for the most famous duel crusading history, Richard the Lionheart of England versus Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. Richard was the ultimate warrior king, brave, brilliant, and brutally temperamental. Saladin was his perfect foil, chivalrous, strategic, and fiercely devout. Their campaigns were masterclasses in medieval warfare, epic sieges like Oka, daring cavalry charges, and tense negotiations. Saladin, who had recaptured Jerusalem in 1187, was admired even by his enemies for his mercy. Richard, after a hard-fought stalemate, secured a treaty allowing Christian pilgrims access to the Holy City, but not its rule. The Third Crusade ended not with a bang, but with a weary handshake. Jerusalem remained in Muslim hands. The dark art of ancient love magic. Forget roses, forget chocolates, forget whispered sweet nothings under the moonlight. In the ancient world, love was not a gentle serenade. It was a battlefield, a siege, a desperate, often dangerous, act of will. When charm failed and poetry fell flat, when rejection cut to deep or desire burned to hot, people didn't just sigh and move on. They reached for something darker. They reached for magic, not the sparkly, Disney kind. This was the real stuff, the kind that smelled of burnt hair and bitter herbs, that whispered names into the dark. that called upon gods who demanded payment in blood and madness. This is the dark art of ancient love magic, a practice as old as longing itself, woven into the very fabric of Babylon, Greece, Rome, and Egypt, a desperate science of the heart, where passion was not found, but forged, and forged it was, in fire, in shadow, and sometimes in the restless soil of a graveyard. 1. Babylon, where love was war, and demons were your wingmen. Our story begins in the smoky alleyways of ancient Babylon, where love wasn't left to chance. If you couldn't win someone's heart with a smile, you enlisted divine, or demonic, help. Babylonians saw love as a cosmic tug of war, and they had the tools to win it. Enter the clay figurine. Not a child's toy, but a vessel for your will. You'd carve the name of your beloved, or your rival. Into soft clay whisper your desire to the goddess Ishtar, a deity who once destroyed a mountain because a lover slighted her. Yes, that kind of goddess. And then you'd bury it under their doorstep. Bury it near their bed. Bury it with a lock of their hair, a drop of their sweat, a clipping of their nail, organic tokens, little pieces of their soul, tethered to your spell. The goal, simple, to heat their heart, to make it burn for you, or to make it rot with despair for your enemy. One particularly elegant curse, asking the gods to make your rival's breath smell like a corpse. Subtle, no, effective, absolutely. In Babylon, love wasn't whispered, it was commanded. And if the gods were busy, well, there were always the restless dead, the chthonic spirits, happy to lend a hand, for a price. 2. Greece, madness, lead tablets, and the art of emotional kidnapping. The Greeks gave us philosophy, democracy, and a truly terrifying brand of love magic known as agi. Literally, I drag them to me. This wasn't about mutual affection. This was about domination, about reducing a person's free will to ash, the favored tool, the lead tablet. Cheap, durable, and heavy with symbolic weight. You etch your curse onto its cold surface, burn her heart until she comes to me, crawling, and then you'd fold it, like a cursed love letter, and bury it. Not just anywhere, in a graveyard, beside a fresh corpse, at a crossroads, places where the veil between worlds was thin, where underworld spirits and restless ghosts could be roused to do your dirty work. Why ghosts? Because when you're trying to inflict obsessive, sleepless, hallucinatory madness on someone, you need employees who have nothing better to do. And if agi was for dragging them in, philia spales were for keeping them there, often used by wives to calm a wandering husband. These were slipped into his wine, his oil, his daily bread, magical tranquilizers hidden in plain sight, the ingredients, honey, myrrh, and sometimes menstrual blood, the ultimate intimate tether, believed to bind a man's soul to his lovers forever. Greek love magic wasn't romantic. It was strategic, visceral, a weapon aimed straight at the heart and the mind. 3. Rome, binding spells, Venus wine, and legal loopholes. The Romans looked at Greek love magic and said, yes, but more drama. They called their curses defictions, binding spells, and they didn't just want to attract love. They wanted to own it, to control it, to rewrite fate itself. These spells, etched onto thin sheets of lead, read like melodramatic fanfiction mixed with a court summons. Let Victrix burn with love for me, Marcus, like a torch, day and night, until she can no longer bear to be without me. Charming, right? Marcus didn't just write this, he buried it next to a child's grave, because nothing says true love like leveraging the power of a dead toddler. But it wasn't all about lead and graves. Romans were masters of subtlety, or at least they tried to be. Perfumes and oils became delivery systems for desire. A woman might anoint herself, or her intended, with a concoction laced with vervain, mint, or belladonna, a plant that could sedate or kill, depending on the dosage. And then there was the infamous Venus wine, a potent love potion rumored to contain animal parts, exotic herbs, and other more personal fluids. Slaves and courtesans were said to slip it into a masteress goblet, a liquid power play in a society obsessed with control. Roman law. It acknowledged love magic, but not as a crime of passion. It was sorcery, a public threat, especially if it messed with property rights or inheritance. Love was political, magical, and occasionally toxic, just the way they liked it. 4. Egypt. Sacred poetry, wax dolls, and blood-soaked potions in Egypt. Love magic wasn't just dark, it was sacred. A mystical, dangerous dance with deities like Hathor, Isis, and Bes. Here, spells were less about brute force and more about divine poetry. You didn't just command, you conjured, a common technique, the dream spell. You de-summon a god or demon to whisper into your beloved's sleeping ear. You long for her like the desert longs for rain. Elegant, yes. Manipulative, absolutely. These spells were written on papyrus, often in potent red ink, and sometimes accompanied by tiny drawings, bound figures, birds with clipped wings, visual reminders for the gods, just in case they needed a nudge. But poetry alone wasn't enough. Physical objects held power. Enter the wax figurine. You'd craft dolls representing yourself and your target, anoint them with lotus oil for affection, or scorpion venom for revenge, pierce them with needles, lock them in jars. The possibilities for emotional engineering were endless. And the potions, oh, the potions, honey, wine, mandrake root, and, yes, blood, menstrual blood mixed with beer, believed to bind a man's soul to the woman through shared essence. Offer that as a modern cocktail bar and see how it goes. In Egypt, love wasn't just felt, it was ritualized. A sacred, terrifying alchemy of word, object, and offering. 5. The sinister pantry. Hair, blood, and powdered mummy. So, what exactly went into these ancient love spells? Forget rose petals. The ingredients were chosen for their symbolic, and often visceral, power. The more taboo, the more potent. A lock of hair, a clipping of nail, a drop of spit, menstrual blood. These weren't just gross, they contained personal essence. To bind someone, you needed a piece of them, or a piece of yourself, but it got weirder. In Babylon, lion skin, crocodile fat, feathers of nocturnal birds, creatures that lived between worlds. In Egypt, scorpion venom, to stir both desire and dread. In Rome, ashes of burned bones, or, disturbingly, the remains of condemned criminals. If love couldn't be earned, it would be stolen from the world of the dead. One Greek recipe instructed you to grind up bat bones, mix them with honey and wine, and leave the concoction beneath a moonlit statue of Aphrodite. Drink it, and your target would become mad with desire, or just mad. Many potions blurred the line between aphrodisiac and poison. Belladonna, mandrake, henbane, taken in the right dose. Light-headed euphoria, taken in the wrong dose. Eternal love, in a tombstone kind of way. 6. Love curses. When I want you becomes I own you. Not all love spells were about attraction. Some were pure, unadulterated curses, emotional kidnapping. These weren't pleas for affection. They were blueprints for obsession, for humiliation, for vengeance. In Greece and Rome, many so-called love spells were actually defixiones, binding curses designed to shatter a person's emotional independence. Bind her knees so she cannot dance with another. Bind her lips so she cannot kiss another. The goal: to render the victim sleepless, obsessed, and emotionally enslaved, to make them crawl back to you, not out of love, but out of supernatural compulsion. These spells were often folded tightly, symbolizing the sealed, suffocating fate of the victim, and deposited in graves, wells, or crossroads. And if you had a rival, the spell would do double duty: inflame your target's passion for you, while simultaneously cursing your competitor with hair loss, a rotting voice, or womb sickness. In Egypt, some spells invoked lion-headed deities to tear apart a target's peace of mind. This wasn't romance, this was war. 7. Magic in the mundane, charms, potions, and enchanted underwear. But ancient love magic wasn't always hidden in crypts or chanted in temples. Much of it lived in the everyday, woven into the routines of daily life. In bustling markets, vendors sold magical charms, small amulets made from carnelian, hematite, or bronze, shaped like phalluses, hands, or eyes, carried in tunics, sewn into garments, to attract, to shield, to enchant. A girl might wear one hoping to catch a suitor's eye. A wife might tuck one under her mattress to keep her husband loyal. Love magic slipped into food. Meals were prepared with more than spice. They were prepared with intent. In Rome, women stirred aphrodisiacs into sauces, poured honeyed wine laced with herbs, or served bread kneaded with whispered spells. Dinner became a slow seduction. Even cosmetics weren't safe. Greek women ground special herbs into their eye or lip pigments, believing it would make their gaze irresistible. One spell instructed a woman to recite a hymn to Aphrodite while applying rouge, turning her makeup routine into a sacred act of attraction. And clothing, a Babylonian text recommended washing a garment in enchanted water before giving it to a potential lover. The shirt itself became a charm, and if they wore it, the spell tightened. Like a net, love magic wasn't for sorcerers only. It was for everyone. For the desperate housewife, the lovelorn merchant, the ambitious courtesan. It was in the kitchen, the bedroom, the bathhouse. It was life, with a side of supernatural. 8. The perilous price, madness, divine wrath, and magical feuds. But here's the thing about playing with cosmic forces. They don't always play nice. Ancient texts are filled with warnings. Philosophers mocked love potion users as foolish. Priests labeled them dangerous. And the spells themselves often came with fine print. Do not call upon this spirit unless you are ready to accept what follows. What followed could be disturbing, even tragic. A Roman legend tells of a man driven mad by a failed spell, wandering the streets at night, calling out the name of a woman he no longer recognized. Another tale speaks of a woman who used a potion to secure her husband's fidelity, only to find herself the target of his violent, paranoid obsession. In Egypt, invoking Hathor or Isis without proper offerings could anger the deity, bringing misfortune instead of romance. If she is not meant to love you, your heart shall know sorrow tenfold. And rivals, they fought back. A targeted woman might hire a counter-magician, sparking a full-blown hex war, spells flying in both directions, sometimes for years, protective charms, salt circles, sacred words, all part of the defense. Perhaps most chillingly, these spells often succeeded in creating obsession, not affection. The victim might feel compelled, but confused, physically drawn. But emotionally vacant, love turned into compulsion. A haunting echo of true connection. 9. The unbroken thread. From ancient spells to modern manifestation, the gods of Babylon have fallen silent. The Roman grave tablets have crumbled, but the heartbeat of ancient love magic, it never stopped. It simply adapted. Today, you won't find many people burying lead tablets, but you will find shelves overflowing with aphrodisiac tonics, ancient herbs like mandrake and ginseng repackaged as modern elixirs. In southern Italy, folk traditions live on: red ribbons tied under mattresses, herbal sachets hidden in clothing, rituals passed down through grandmothers, echoing Roman and Greek magic. In parts of the Middle East and North Africa, talismans and whispered cooking spells still carry the DNA of Egyptian and Mesopotamian rites. Pop culture, it's obsessed. From vampires compelled by blood bonds to potions slipped into wine glasses, the love spell gone wrong, a favorite trope, reflecting ancient warnings that passion conjured by force often unravels into chaos. Even modern psychology has uncovered parallels, mirroring body language, using scent to trigger memory, timing confessions for maximum impact. Were ancient spellcasters just using proto-psychological hacks? dressed up in divine ritual. And today, love spells are sold online. Etsy shops offer customized candle rituals. TikTok hosts manifestation tutorials that wouldn't look out of place on a Greek papyrus scroll. In the end, ancient love magic wasn't just about getting someone to love you. It was about regaining control in the face of longing. That impulse, timeless, desperate, beautifully human, remains with us. We still chase that same alchemy. To be seen, desired, chosen, and if a little magic helps along the way, so be it. Blood, sweat, and sacred games. Sports in the ancient before there were stadiums roaring with 80,000 voices. Before there were billion-dollar contracts and global broadcasts. Before sports became entertainment, there was ritual, there was blood, there was sweat poured out as an offering to the gods. This is not the story of games. This is the story of sacred games, where victory meant immortality, where defeat could mean death, and where every leap, every throw, every clash of bodies was a prayer whispered in motion. From the sun-baked plains of Greece to the blood-soaked sands of Rome. From the cosmic courts of Mesoamerica to the disciplined archery fields of China, the ancient world didn't just play. It performed, it worshipped, it fought, not always with swords, but always for something greater than themselves. This is blood, sweat, and sacred games. 1. Greece, where athletes ran naked for the gods and glory. It began in Olympia, not with a whistle, but with an oath. In 776 BCE, beneath the watchful gaze of Zeus, the first Olympic Games ignited, not as a pastime, but as a sacred festival. Athletes, stripped bare, yes, completely nude, swore before the altar, no cheating, no magic, no cowardice. To break the oath, public flogging, divine wrath, eternal shame. This wasn't vanity. It was transparency. No armor, no tricks, just flesh, bone, and will laid bare before heaven. The events, simple, brutal, beautiful. The stadium, a single sprint down the sacred track. The discus, spinning like a silver moon. The javelin, arcing toward the sky. Wrestling, where men grappled like titans, their bodies slick with olive oil and sweat. And then, the pancration, the all-power, a savage fusion of boxing and wrestling, where almost nothing was forbidden, no biting, no eye gouging, almost, men broke fingers, shattered jaws, sometimes died, and the crowd roared. Why? Because in the pancration, you didn't just fight your opponent. You fought fear itself. Victory, a simple olive wreath, no gold, no cash, just immortality. Poets sang your name, sculptors carved your likeness. Your city through you feasts for life. You became a living god, for a fleeting, glorious moment. But women, forbiddance, not just from competing, from even watching. The Olympics were a temple of masculinity, yet, in quiet defiance, they held their own. The Haraya, fortresses for maidens, hair flying, tunics fluttering, a whisper of grace in a world of thunder. In Greece, sport wasn't recreation. It was theology in motion. 2. Rome, where gladiators bled for bread, circuses, and immortality. If Greece worshipped the body, Rome worshipped spectacle. Enter the gladiator, not a hero, not always even a man. Often a slave, a prisoner, a condemned criminal. Yet, in the blinding light of the Colosseum, he became a god of the sand. Trained in ludi, schools of death, they learned to die beautifully. The Secutor, armored and relentless. The Retiarius, dancing with net and trident. The fisherman of flesh, each matchup a carefully choreographed drama of strength, speed, and survival. The crowd didn't just watch, they judged, they roared for mercy. They hissed for death. And the emperor, he held the thumb up for life, down for the sword, though historians whisper it was likely a closed fist for death, an open hand for mercy. Hollywood lied. The Romans, they preferred the truth, messy, bloody, real. but death wasn't guaranteed. A skilled gladiator was an investment, a celebrity. Graffiti scrawled on Pompeii's walls praised their beautiful thighs. Women sent love letters. Some won freedom. Some became trainers. A few, like Spartacus, became legends, turning the arena's violence into revolution. And it wasn't just men. Gladiatresses, women warriors, fought too, rare, scandalous, banned by emperors who feared their power. Yet they came, blades flashing, defying every norm. This was bread and circuses. Keep the masses fed, keep them entertained, and they won't question your tyranny. The Colosseum wasn't just an arena, it was the beating, bleeding heart of the empire. 3. Mesoamerica, where the ball game was cosmic war, and sometimes sacrifice, far from the Mediterranean, in the jungles and highlands of ancient Mexico and Central America. A different kind of game echoed, one where the stakes weren't glory, but cosmic balance. Anomalously, the Mesoamerican ball game. Imagine a solid rubber ball, weighing up to 9 pounds, no hands, no feet, just hips, elbows, knees, slamming into the heavy sphere, sending it hurtling down a stone court shaped like a giant eye. The goal: to pass it through a vertical stone ring, mounted high on the wall. A feat so rare, so miraculous, it was said to echo the path of the sun itself. This wasn't sport. It was myth made real. The Mayas Popov are told of hero twins who descended into the underworld, Xibalba, and played this very game against the lords of death, and won, securing the dawn for humanity. And yes, sometimes it ended in sacrifice. Not always the loser, sometimes the winner, offered to the gods as the ultimate tribute, ascending to divine favor. Other times, captives, their hearts still beating, were bound to the game's outcome. The thud of the ball was the drumbeat of destiny. The courts, Tlachli, were sacred spaces lined with carvings of serpents, gods, and decapitated heads. To play was to dance on the edge of the abyss. To win was to cheat death, to lose, to become part of the story. In Mesoamerica, sport wasn't played, it was lived, and sometimes it was died. 4. Egypt, where pharaohs shot arrows for divine right and showmanship, a land of the Nile. Sport was less about competition, more about cosmic order. Mat. Wrestling, depicted in tomb paintings over 4,000 years old, showed young men locked in holds as complex as any modern judo, training for war, yes, but also embodying the eternal struggle between order and chaos. But the true star, the pharaoh. Archery wasn't just a skill, it was propaganda. Reliefs show kings, standing tall in chariots, firing arrows through copper rings, while the chariot raced at full speed. Not for sport, for power. Each perfect shot screamed, "I am chosen. I am divine. I hold chaos at bay." Rowing regattas on the Nile, ceremonial, recreating the journey of Ra, the sun god, across the heavens. Synchronized strokes weren't just impressive, they were prayer. And the women, while barred from the battlefield games, they danced, they leapt. They performed acrobatics at banquets, not as mere entertainment, but as rituals of fertility, grace, and divine femininity. Their bodies, too, were temples in motion. In Egypt, every sprint, every shot, every leap wasn't just physical. It was sacred geometry, aligning the human with the divine. 5. China, where archery was philosophy and polo was for princesses. In ancient China, sport was never just sport. It was moral training. It was statecraft. It was the cultivation of the soul. Archery, under Confucius, became a ritual of perfection. Nobles didn't just aim for the target, they aimed for inner virtue. The bowstring's twang was the sound of discipline. Hitting the mark, a metaphor for hitting moral truth. Etiquette mattered more than accuracy. A bow, a deep breath, a silent prayer. This was meditation with a lethal point. Then came Kyuju, kickball, the world's first soccer. Born in military camps to train soldiers' agility, it exploded into civilian life. Teams, nets, rules, a game of grace, strategy, and lightning-fast feet. And then polo, but not as you know it. In the Tang dynasty, emperors and generals thundered across fields on horseback, mallets flashing, and beside them, women, noble women, in silk robes, galloping, striking, competing, a shocking, glorious defiance of later Confucian norms. One emperor even died playing. They called it the Game of Kings. It was also, briefly, the Game of Queens. Martial arts, wushu, weren't just combat. They were spiritual paths. Monasteries became dojos. Sparring was prayer. Strength was balance. The ideal athlete, not the strongest. The most harmonious, in China, to move was to cultivate. To play was to become. 6. The Near East, where kings wrestled lions and boys learned the three truths in the cradle of civilization. Mesopotamia, Assyria, Persia, sport was the language of power. The Epic of Gilgamesh begins not with a quest, but with a wrestling match. The hero, Gilgamesh, locks arms with the wild man Enkidu. They shake the earth, they break walls, and when it ends, not in death, but in brotherhood. Wrestling wasn't just strength, it was the forging of bonds. Assyrian kings didn't boast of their wisdom, they boasted of their lion hunts. Carvings show them, standing in chariots, spearing roaring beasts, not for food, but for fear. See this, the relief screamed. I tame chaos, I am your shield, the Persians. They turned sports into education. Young boys were taught the three truths: ride a horse, draw a bow, speak the truth. Archery and horsemanship weren't hobbies, they were the pillars of empire. Public games during festivals, tests of strength, yes, but also displays of divine favor. Win, and the gods smiled. Lose, perhaps you'd angered them. Even board games, like the royal game of yore, were seen as mental duels, tools of divination. To win was to prove your mind was blessed. In the Near East, sport was the theatre of kingship. Every throw, every ride, every hunt was a declaration. I am strong, I am just, I am chosen. 7. South Asia, where wrestling was worship and yoga was the ultimate sport in the Indus Valley. Figurines show dancers, acrobats, wrestlers, a society that revered the moving body. But it was in Vedic India that sport became spiritual science. Dhanurveda, the science of archery, wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about focus, discipline, the unity of mind, eye, and hand. Warriors trained not just to kill, but to transcend. Then came Malayuddha, sacred wrestling. Wrestlers, or Palwans, lived like monks. They followed strict diets. They rose before dawn. They trained in akharas, temple-like gyms, where the scent of earth and sweat mixed with incense. To wrestle was to purify. Victory wasn't just over an opponent, but over the self. And yoga, forget the Instagram poses. Originally, it was the ultimate athletic discipline, a grueling, systematic conquest of the body to free the soul. Asanas were feats of strength and endurance, pranayama, breath control for warriors. This was sport as liberation, ball games, dice games. They appear in the Mahabharata, played by gods and heroes. Even Krishna is depicted as a master of sport. His playful dances, his strategic games, all metaphors for cosmic play. In South Asia, the body wasn't a machine. It was a temple, and sport, the ritual that kept it sacred. 8. Women of the ancient arena. From Spartan warriors to Tang Dynasty polo queens, history whispers that sport was a man's world. History lies in Sparta. While Greece barred women from Olympia, Spartan girls ran. They wrestled. They threw javelins in public before men. Why? Strong mothers make strong warriors. Their bodies weren't hidden, they were honed. In Egypt, women danced with the grace of goddesses, their acrobatics a sacred art. In Rome, gladiatresses defied the sand, blades flashing in the arena's cruel light. In China, Tang noble women ruled the polo field, their silk robes billowing as they charged. Even in Greece, the Haraya gave young maidens their own Olympic moment, barefoot, hair loose, racing for honor under Hiri's watchful eye. They weren't always equal, they weren't always celebrated. But they were there, fighting, running, playing, claiming their space in the sweat and the dust. Their legacy, a quiet roar that echoes through time. We were here. We were strong. We played the game. 9. The unbroken torch. How ancient sweat built our modern games. The stadiums are gone. The gods are silent. The sacrifices, mercifully, ended. But the spirit, it never left. The Olympics. A direct resurrection. The flame, the odes, the laurel wreaths, all whispers of Olympia. We still crown our victors. We still sing their names. We still chase that fleeting godhood. The Colosseum's shadow. It stretches over every modern stadium. The roar of the crowd, the celebrity athlete, the merch, the halftime shows, the bread and circuses of our age, now streamed in 4K, the Mesoamerican ball game. Its spirit lives in every do-or-die playoff, every game called a battle, every trophy treated like a sacred relic. We may not sacrifice players, but we sacrifice everything for victory. Chinese Cuju, it evolved, it traveled, it became football, the world's game. Persian archery, the foundation of Olympic target shooting. Indian yoga, a global phenomenon, still, at its core, the ultimate sport of mind and body. Even the board games of your Senate, they're on your phone, in your living room. Still testing strategy, still whispering of fate. The ancients didn't just invent games, they invented the idea that through sweat, through struggle, through sacred effort, we touch something eternal, not just strength, not just speed, but meaning, honor, legacy. So the next time you watch a game, feel the drumbeat, hear the echo, see the ghost of a gladiator, a Spartan girl, a Maya ball player, a Tang princess. They're still here, running, fighting, playing, reminding us sport was never just a game. It was, and always will be, the human soul in motion. Beneath the city of light, the haunting history of the Paris Catacombs. Paris, the city of light, of lovers strolling hand in hand along the Seine, of artists sketching in sun-dappled cafes, of revolutions shouted from rooftops and champagne popped in gilded ballrooms. But beneath it all, beneath the cobblestones, the metro lines, the very foundations of Notre Dame and the Louvre, lies another Paris, a Paris of silence, a Paris of shadows, a Paris built not of dreams, but of bones. 6 million of them. Welcome to the Empire of Death. This is not a cemetery. This is not a monument. This is a solution, a desperate, ingenious, horrifying solution to a problem no city should ever face. What do you do when the dead refuse to stay buried? Tonight, we descend. 1. The descent. Entering the Empire of Death. It begins with a spiral staircase, cold iron railing. The air thickens, growing damp, heavy, smelling of wet stone and something older, something deeper. The sounds of the city above, the honking cars, the laughter, the clinking glasses fade, replaced by the echo of your own breath, your own heartbeat. And then you see it, not a pile, not a mess, an arrangement, skulls, femurs, tibias, stacked with chilling, almost obsessive precision, walls of bone, arches of bone, hearts woven from bone, crosses formed by bone. It's macabre, it's beautiful, it's utterly, profoundly silent. This is the Ossuary, the beating, silent heart of the Paris Catacombs. You are standing inside the largest grave in the Western world, and you are very, very small, too. The crisis above, when Paris drowned in its own dead. To understand the catacombs, you must understand the horror that birthed them. The year is 1780. Paris is bursting at the seams, and its cemeteries, they are exploding. The worst offender, les innocents, nestled in the bustling heart of the city. This cemetery had been swallowing the dead for nearly 1,000 years. By the 18th century, it was a nightmare. Corpses weren't buried. They were dumped into mass graves, stacked 6, 7, 8 deep. The ground rose, swelling like a festering wound, the stench unbearable. It seeped into homes, into bakeries, into churches. Meat spoiled instantly, wine turned sour. Residents near Les Innocents complained of headaches, fevers, a constant, gnawing dread. Basements cracked, walls bulged, and sometimes they collapsed, spilling rotting limbs and skulls into cellars and kitchens. This wasn't superstition. This was public health catastrophe. The city was quite literally sitting on a ticking time bomb of disease and decay. Something had to be done. The dead had to move. 3. The solution below, the secret nighttime procession of bones. In 1786, the order came down. The bones would be relocated, not to a new cemetery, not to the countryside, underground, into the vast, forgotten network of limestone quarries that honeycombed the earth beneath Paris, the very quarries that had provided the stone to build the city above. And so, the great transfer began. Every night, 4 years, a grim procession wound through the sleeping streets, black draped carts, pulled by silent horses. Workers in long, hooded robes, faces grim. Priests chanting the last rites, their voices swallowed by the night. They shoveled, they scooped, they bagged, they carted. Tons upon tons of bones, skulls clattering, femurs rattling, were hauled down into the dark. At first, they were simply dumped, a chaotic mountain of the anonymous dead. It was sanitation. It was necessity. It was profoundly disrespectful, but Paris had no choice. The living needed to breathe, and the dead, they would have to learn to rest in the dark. 4. The Ossuary as art. Louis-Étienne Haricart de Thory's macabre masterpiece Dumping Bones solved the smell, but it didn't solve the soul of the place. It was a warehouse of death, a dumping ground. Enter Louis-Étienne Haricart de Thory, inspector of quarries, engineer, and, unexpectedly, artist. In the early 1800s, he looked at the chaotic piles and saw potential, not for profit, not for spectacle, but for meaning. He ordered the bones cleaned, sorted, arranged. Skulls were placed with their hollow eyes staring out, like silent sentinels. Femurs were stacked in tight, cross-hatched patterns, creating texture, shadow, depth. Arches were built, columns were formed. Entire walls became intricate mosaics of mortality. He added plaques, quoting scripture and philosophy. Stop. This is the empire of death. He reinforced the tunnels, using the bones themselves as structural fill. He turned a grim necessity into a profound, haunting work of art, a memento mori on a scale never before imagined. The catacombs were no longer just a solution. They were a statement, a silent sermon on the vanity of life, the equality of death, and the sheer, staggering weight of history. 5. Who lies here? The anonymous millions, peasants, plague victims, and revolutionaries. Look closely at the walls. Every skull is identical. Every femur, interchangeable. 6 million lives, reduced to geometry. But behind the uniformity, a universe of stories. These are the bakers who rose before dawn, the seamstresses who stitched by candlelight, the priests who murmured prayers, the soldiers who marched to war, the children who never saw their 5th birthday. They died of plague, the Black Death, cholera, their bodies piled high in mass graves. They died in childbirth, in accidents, in famines. They were the ordinary souls who built, cleaned, loved, and lived in Paris for centuries. And then, there are the extraordinary dead, the victims of the French Revolution, guillotined by the hundreds, their bodies dumped in quicklime pits, later exhumed and brought here. Did Robespierre's bones rest beside those of the king he helped execute? Did a noble woman's skull touch that of the revolutionary who sent her to the scaffold? Down here, titles mean nothing, all are equal. All are silent, monks, nuns, aristocrats, beggars, soldiers, saints, sinners. They're all here, anonymous, intermingled, a democratic republic of the dead. 6. The Cataphiles, the underground explorers and their secret city, the official tour. It's barely a mile, a sanitized, well-lit path for tourists. But the real catacombs, they stretch for 200 miles. A vast, dark, forbidden labyrinth. And it has its own citizens, the Cataphiles. These are not tourists. They are urban explorers, historians, artists, rebels. They know the hidden entrances, manholes in parks, trapdoors in basements, storm drains swallowed by ivy. They slip into the dark, armed with headlamps, hand-drawn maps, and nerves of steel. Down here, they've built a second Paris. Hidden chambers become art galleries, adorned with surreal murals painted by flashlight. Forgotten tunnels host underground cinemas, raves, and candlelit dinner parties, dancing on the bones of history. They've named the places, the beach, the cathedral, the mushroom forest. It's illegal, dangerous, tunnels collapse, flood, get lost, and you may never be found. Yet they return. For them, the catacombs aren't a museum. They're a sanctuary, a canvas, a living, breathing, if you can call it that, testament to the city's hidden soul. 7. The language of the tunnels, graffiti, secret codes, and unofficial maps. The walls of the catacombs speak, not with voices, but with marks. The oldest are the quarrymen's signatures, dates, initials, crude arrows scratched into limestone centuries ago, guiding workers through the lightless maze. Then come the official plaques, somber, poetic, marking the origins of the bones, from the cemetery of the Holy Innocents, transferred in 1786, but deeper, in the forbidden zones, a newer language blooms, cataphile graffiti. Elaborate murals, skeletons waltzing, mythical beasts, haunting portraits, cryptic arrows and symbols. GV gives Chelgrin, 30 meters gives Monsuris, names etched in stone, a claim, a memorial, a whisper. I was here. They leave stencils, bottle caps, poems. They build benches from scavenged stone. They create a map not of streets, but of experience, a living, evolving chronicle written in chalk, paint, and shadow. To navigate the true catacombs, you don't need a compass, you need a legend. You need to speak the language of the dark. 8. The catacombs at war, Nazi bunkers and French resistance hideouts. The catacombs are not just a resting place, they are a strategic asset. During the French Revolution, whispers say revolutionaries used the tunnels to move unseen, plotting beneath the feet of the monarchy. But their darkest hour came in World War II, when the Nazis occupied Paris. They didn't just march above ground, they dug in. Deep within the catacombs, beneath the Lycée Montaigne, they built a fortified bunker, a hidden command post, complete with communications, supplies, and reinforced walls. And who fought them? The French resistance. Using their intimate knowledge of the forbidden tunnels, knowledge passed down by Cataphiles, they turned the catacombs into a guerrilla labyrinth. They smuggled weapons, staged ambushes, held secret meetings in chambers lined with bones. The catacombs became a battlefield, a sanctuary, a weapon. The dead, silent witnesses to a war fought in whispers and shadows, just inches below the jackboots of tyranny. 9. Legends and lore, the phantom, the lost camcorder tape, and underground cults. Where there is darkness, there are ghosts, and the catacombs breed them. The most famous, the phantom. Some say he's a lost quarryman, doomed to wander forever. Others, a plague victim, searching for his family among the 6 million. Visitors report cold spots, disembodied whispers, the feeling of being watched, always watched. Then there's the lost camcorder tape. In the 1990s, Cataphiles allegedly found a video camera in a sealed chamber. The footage, later broadcast, showed a lone man, increasingly panicked, running through the tunnels, calling out, before dropping the camera. He was never found. The tape, real, a hoax. It doesn't matter. The legend breathes. Whispers speak of hidden rooms, thrones of bone, fully stocked bars, underground cinemas, of cults performing rituals in the deepest dark, of a message scrawled on a wall. Do not try to find us. The catacombs don't just hold bones. They hold fear, the primal dread of the dark, the unknown, the sheer, crushing weight of mortality. The legends aren't just stories, they're the echo of that fear, given form. 10. The catacombs today, tourism, controversy, and the ultimate memento mori today. The catacombs are a paradox, a top tourist attraction, a place for selfies with skulls, a stop on the Parisian sightseeing circuit, complete with ticket booths and brochures. Hundreds of thousands descend each year. They shuffle through the official mile, cameras flashing, voices hushed, then emerge, blinking, into the light, clutching their souvenirs. Critics cry foul. Is it disrespectful to turn mass graves into a theme park? To reduce 6 million souls to a backdrop for Instagram? Perhaps, but the catacombs serve a deeper purpose. They are the ultimate memento mori, a reminder. Remember, you will die. They force us to confront the scale of time, the fragility of life, the absurdity of our daily worries. Down here, empires crumble, revolutions fade, lovers grow old. All that remains is bone. And bone, arranged with such chilling care, whispers a final, profound truth. We build our cities on the bones of those who came before. And one day, they will build theirs on ours. The catacombs don't glorify death, they sanctify life. By showing us its end, they make its every breath, every heartbeat, every moment in the sun, infinitely, achingly precious. So the next time you walk the streets of Paris, pause, look down. Beneath your feet, in the silent dark, 6 million souls are watching, waiting, reminding you to live. So, you climb the stairs, back into the light, back to the noise, the laughter, the clinking glasses, the lovers strolling hand in hand along the Seine. Paris welcomes you back, vibrant, alive, impossibly beautiful. But you're different now. You've seen what lies beneath. 6 million silent witnesses, peasants, poets, plague victims, revolutionaries, monks who prayed, nobles who schemed, children who never grew old. They're still down there, waiting, watching, holding up the very city you walk on. The catacombs don't ask you to be afraid, they ask you to remember that life, this dazzling, chaotic, heartbreakingly beautiful life, is fleeting, that every cafe terrace, every sunlit boulevard, every whispered "I love you" is built on a foundation of bones. And that's not morbid, that's sacred. So live, laugh loudly, love fiercely, dance in the rain, argue passionately, chase your dreams like they're the last thing on earth. Because one day, you, too, will become part of the silence, part of the story, part of the empire of death. And until then, carpe diem, my friends, seize the day.